I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT. I'm going to be your main host today. Supporting me, we have Mansi. Mansi is a GMAT strategy expert. She's actually a very recent GMAT strategy expert, but one of our most enthusiastic GMAT strategy experts at e-GMAT. And she's going to support us during this session. She's going to make sure that your questions are answered. The goal of this webinar is to make sure that each one of you has a study plan to help you get to 720, 730, 760 or so on the GMAT. Each one of you understands how that study plan would work. Each one of you understands why is it that the study plan is the right study plan for you, and what to measure as you're executing on that study plan. We'll also talk about, in addition to that study plan piece, we'll also talk about what are some of the best practices that you should follow when it comes to getting to a high GMAT score. But before we do that, let's kind of figure out what kind of GMAT scores are you aiming for. Let's put in my poll question. Yeah, what's your target GMAT score? And again, you'll see the ranges here starting from 600. Again, my apologies if you're aiming for a score below 600. Generally, I don't have a lot of people over there, so I did not waste an option slot for that. So a good number of you are aiming for that score of 760 or higher. 730 to 750, quite a few students as well. It's a very similar number. So about 80% is in these two buckets, another 16% or so in the 710, 720 bucket, and then about 5% in the 660 to 700. Generally, this group's group of potential high scorers, people who desire to get to that high score. And let's kind of talk about when do you plan to take the test. And again, if you've not responded to this one, please do so. 43% haven't taken a date as of yet. Similarly, 22% of you are in that 46 to 75 day period where you can have about 100 plus point score improvement fairly easily. 14% are in the 31 to 45 day, and where again 100 point score improvement is fairly possible. I'd say just if you push in a bit more effort, and then we have about 20% of the class in that 0 to 30 day time period. Let's kind of get up. So this is good because it allows us to understand the makeup of this group. Let's get another poll question here, which again tells us the amount of effort that you need to put in. And that is, what is your current GMAT score? I'm going to remove the target GMAT score piece over here. And let's get the current GMAT score data in. Let's get a few more data points, but 40% of you, and again, guys, I love the participation. Many of you are really enthusiastic, you're doing it. A few of us were not as enthusiastic about answering these questions. And again, when you put in this data, it helps me understand the makeup of this group. It helps me personalize or semi-personalize is what I would say this webinar to your needs, and you get more out of this webinar. So put in more data, it helps all of us. It helps you actually. So, but just kind of look at the makeup. We have some really high scorers, 710, 720 folks are already there, and then but 8% of you are in the 660, 700 bracket. At the same time, we have some folks who are in that 560 to 600, 600 to 650, and 400 to 500. We have about 12% of you as well. Now, again, first of all, it's very brave of those of you who are in that low score to really admit you are at that low score, especially when you see others are. So I want to congratulate you. And at the same time, I want to tell you that hey, if you're at that 500 bracket, it may make your journey slightly challenging if you want to get to that 730 score, but it doesn't make it a bit more. You don't have to do very different things. It's just that someone who's at a 600 has to, improve his or her ability in a couple of subsections. Someone who's at a 500 has to do this in about 6 or 7 subsections, but the journeys that they go through in each subsection are very similar, which is what we'll see during this webinar. And talking about starting learning, we have an excellent free trial for those of you who've not experienced it, whether you want to learn sentence correction, critical reasoning, want to learn the meaning-based approach, or whether you want to learn pre-thinking, whether you want to learn inequalities or geometry. We have some really good concepts in our free trial. We give about 2% of all our content out of the free trial. These are AI-based video lessons. Just take a look at this and see if this is a learning style that works for you. We also have some some upcoming free webinars. We have a free geometry webinar. In this, we focus on rectangles. This is that webinar. This webinar is let's make sure this is tomorrow, 24 hours from now. So if you've not registered for this one, definitely do that. And then we have a free sentence correction webinar, which is exactly a week from now. Solve an SC question. If you like the meaning-based approach, you want to learn that meaning-based approach, you can hear it from the horse's mouth. Pyle Tandon, who invented this approach a decade ago and who's still pioneering this approach. She is GMAT Club's #1 rated expert. So definitely join this webinar. If you're an e-GMAT student, don't miss out on this. If you're not an e-GMAT student, this will definitely help you get on the right way to solve GMAT sentence correction. All right, let's kind of get one other data point before we get started, right, with the webinar. That is, what kind of target score are you looking for? And this is a loaded question here. Again, I'm going to explain the answer choices. You're looking for an M7 school, or you're looking for a non-M7 but a top 20 school. That's option number 2. Non-top 20 school in the US. If you're going for European B schools, then you have that option as well. If you're looking for Canadian B schools, you have that option as well. If you're not decided, you can do that as well. And if you are going for an MIM program, you can probably say, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. You can really do that too, and then that's welcome too as well. And there's another data point since we're getting data. So this is another one. Where do you need the most help? This is a multiple response question, but the way I want you to put in is I don't want anyone to put in more than 3. Now, you don't have to put 3. You can probably put 2. That's okay as well. Think of an area where you think you're below the 50th percentile and hit that area overall. Let me broadcast the results over here. You can see about 27% or a quarter of us are going to that M7 school, 20% to a non-M7 but top 20. European B schools are really popular, Indian B schools, but 20% of us are here. And then a few of us are undecided, and some of you just say, hey, you don't have the option that I want over here, so I don't know what the heck you're talking about. With regards to where do people need the most help, SCNCR or SCCR and RC are equally popular. Quant, I'm just surprised that the option that equally popular, except advanced topics, which is just twice as many people as SCCR and RC. Again, data is beautiful. You can draw inferences with that. At e-GMAT, we love data and we love recommending actions based on data. So with that, let's kind of go into the session. Thank you for that wonderful participation. So just in terms of the format of the session, so you see a presentation which is right in the left center is what I like to say. It occupies the majority of the screen for you. That's where I'll have information. I'll be talking to that information. Below this, you see a Q&A part. If you look at the bottom half and you say on the left-hand side, you'll see Q&A. That's Q&A stands for question and answer. If you have a question, post your question over here. Mansi would be happy to answer that question. If that question is something that I'm talking about, I'd be happy to take on that question as well. On the right-hand side, we have what we call as a short answer part. This is the entire right-hand strip that you see is an area for my questions and your answers. You don't post your questions there. You post your questions in the Q&A part, and we put it over here. This is where I ask my questions and you respond to those questions. Is the GMAT harder than IIT JEE? It's the same thing as really saying that is it easier to become a rocket scientist versus becoming a professional footballer? I think those are two different skills. It depends on what your natural skills are. If your natural skills are not so much in general quant and verbal, it could be. If they are in general quant and verbal, most IITians do really well on the GMAT, by the way. Because they're very logical, then it's not as hard as the IIT JEE. Again, not here to compare two dissimilar entities or so. Okay. Another piece. the goal of this webinar is to help how to help you get to a high GMAT score. I see a lot of questions about the profile evaluation. We don't do that now. While we probably have more experience than or just as much experience as top industry experts in this space, because we deal with tens of thousands of students every year. It's just something that we choose not to do. But if you still have questions about those, please hold those questions till the end of the webinar, so that we can do justice to those questions. One thing that you won't, you'd really understand as you go through this webinar is, I don't like to give advice that's half-baked. That's something that could harm you. So if you have questions that are not relevant to the core topic of this webinar, I will put some time aside towards the end, and that will have the opportunity to cross-question you guys to get some more insights and give you relevant feedback. Okay. All right. So again, CAT versus GMAT, you'll learn that. Hold that question for now. I'm going to actually clear most questions for now, because these questions most of these questions would be answered during the course of this webinar. A few of them, profile related, let's post them towards the end or so. Okay. All right. So with that, let's talk about acing the GMAT, and we're going to really talk about in this what does it take to ace the GMAT, and so to do that, we're going to talk about fundamentals of the GMAT. Now, those of you who want to understand GMAT versus GRE, you're going to really understand that as well, how the GMAT or GRE or the Indian version of CAT, how are they different, and then we're going to go towards a study plan, and then we're going to look at what's the strategy for predictable success. So during this webinar, I want to kind of emphasize on 3 or 4 takeaways, and then we're going to really go into detail of every takeaway. We're going to prove why that makes sense. And one of the first takeaways that I want to really talk about is, when it comes to acing the GMAT, focus on building ability. Acing the GMAT is building ability is synonymous with acing the GMAT, and I want to just kind of focus on that point and spend a minute on this point over here. Why? Because when it comes to preparing for the GMAT, a lot of people focus on, hey, how can I answer questions quickly? How many RC questions should I answer? What should I do during the first 10 questions? How can I build the stamina for a test that's 3 hours and 10 minutes long? These things, they are important. But if I were to really kind of do an 80-20 rule, or even a 90-10, so this is more like 90 over here, and all of this combined is 10. Without this is irrelevant. These things start to play an important role only if you have ability. If you don't have ability, you can throw everything else out of the window. Okay. All right. One of the other things, again, this is not a forum for your strategy responses. If you're an e-GMAT student, and you come here to really just say, hey, I'm going to ask a question and I'm going to get a response on that, you're likely going to be disappointed. Why? Because at e-GMAT, we look at about 100 data points before we give you a response, and I have no idea who you are. I cannot look at 100 data points, and I have about 160 students here in the webinar. Again, write to our strategy team, then look at those data points. They'll record a personalized video if needed, and give you a response. Or so if you need to invite you to a winnings behavior session, we'll do that as well. But yeah, again, that's not the place for this. Again, if you want to wait till the end of the webinar, once I'm done with it, I'll be happy to do that. I'll have to ask a few questions, but again, not till that point. Okay, let's talk about ability then. Okay, and I want to kind of differentiate ability from this one term, accuracy, because a lot of people confuse ability with accuracy. Now, what's accuracy? You take a 10-question quiz, you get 8 out of those 10 correct, and you say my accuracy is 80%. Accuracy, what I call as is an absolute measure. You may have gotten 80% of the questions right in a quiz. Someone else may have gotten the same number of questions right as well. Maybe half the people get 80% of the questions right or more in that quiz. So even if you have 80% accuracy, your ability is just 50th percentile in that case. Okay, what's ability? Ability is very little to do with accuracy. You could probably take another 10-question quiz. If that has hard questions where each question has an accuracy of 45%, and you get 7 out of those 10 correct, if you do the probabilistic calculation, this will put you at about 90th percentile ability. If you do the probability, if you are someone who understands how distributions work, and so on and so forth. So ability is a comparative measure. It says how good you are compared to others. Okay. Just as a philosophy, and then on the GMAT, we've talked about ability is a true measure. We're going to really look at why that is the case. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to simulate how an adaptive test algorithm works. And you may have seen this happen before, but probably the insights that you're going to get from this, you probably haven't gotten those insights still. So what we're going to do is we're going to simulate how an adaptive test algorithm works. On the y-axis, what we have is a difficulty level of question. On the x-axis, we have question number. We're going to simulate two students here, student 1 and student 2, or case 1 and case 2 in this case. So student 1, or case 1 as it's called, that's the blue line, gets the first question, right. The second question, accordingly, is a slightly more challenging question. You can see we're going higher on the y-axis. The higher you go on y-axis, the more difficult a question becomes. He gets that right as well. Gets a third question, which is a bit more challenging, gets that wrong. Accordingly, the fourth question, you can see this over here, is at a difficulty level between question 2 and question 3. If you do horizontal lines from here, you can see that it's between those two. So gets the fourth question right, and then gets a fifth question, just slightly more challenging, gets this fifth question wrong. Now, student 2, or case 2, starts again with a medium difficulty level, gets the first question wrong, which means they get the second question, which is slightly easier, get it right, gets the third question, which is a bit more challenging. Again, you can see we're going higher on the y-axis over here as you go from 2 to 3. So gets that question wrong, gets the fourth question, which is easier, gets that right, and gets the fifth question right as well. Now, if we were to ask you who is doing better, and the answer is, I think, a fairly, obvious. Let's kind of get this data overall. Let's see who's doing better, and let's get in a poll question. If I were to end the test at question number 5 and say this is the end of the test, who is doing better? Is it student 1 or is it student 2? Let's remove broadcast results so that we don't bias your responses. Let's get to about 160 students here. Let's get to about 80 responses. At least half of you should respond. I have about 70 responses, 78, 79, 81. That's good. Let's end the poll. But 87% of you actually say student 1 is doing better. That's wonderful. And about 13% of you say student 2 is doing better. Let's kind of put in a short answer poll. I want you to tell me, why do you think student 1 is doing better? You guys are right. Student 1 is doing better. What's the reason? Why is it that the test rates student 1 higher? He's answered harder questions correctly. Yes, absolutely. His ability is better. Why? Because he's answered harder questions correctly. Yes, that's really good. Not just attempted, they've answered. Actually, if you look at it, student 2 did not even get the opportunity to answer hard questions. Okay. So that's really good. You guys understand this, and this is really good. You're able to visualize this, translate this into your own words, and because of that, you're able to reason this out. And that's what I really like about motivated people. Now, for those of you who are asking about the difference between GMAT and CAT, and which is an Indian entrance test, if this were the CAT, would there be any difference between student 1 and student 2? Why? Because both of them have answered 3 out of 5 questions correctly. No, there wouldn't be. Why? Because CAT focuses purely on accuracy regardless of the difficulty level. In fact, on the CAT, the right strategy is to answer the easiest questions first, then medium difficulty questions, and then hard. In fact, people who go towards hard questions and miss out on some easy and medium questions are considered bad test takers. Again, really important. That's kind of the biggest difference between the GMAT and the CAT, just the exam format. Yes, the syllabus is different, the kind of questions are different, but in terms of what the exam intends to test, that's completely different. The GMAT's a qualification test, and that's something you've got to understand. What the GMAT measures is your readiness for business school. which means if you score 700 or higher, it shows that you have the ability to comprehend the coursework. The CAT is not designed to be a qualification test. The CAT is designed to be a rejection test, which means if you don't get a certain percentile, these schools won't even consider you. It's not a holistic process. So the purpose is different, and again, the CAT doesn't measure ability. Actually, the GRE is very, very similar. It's not doesn't measure ability as well. The GRE would behave very, very similar to this. Okay. So is it imperative to start well and answer questions correctly from the get-go? That's a great question. Now, I want to give you a model for this over here. And let me see if I can add a new share. And let's put a whiteboard in this case. Okay. So can everyone over here, and then I'd ask you to take the trouble to type your answers out. Can everyone see the whiteboard here? Yes, right? All right. I'm going to clear your responses. Thank you for this. And this is a model that will work really well when you want to answer any question about the GMAT. The question is, so is it imperative to start well? Let's answer this question. And I'm going to answer this question formally again in about 15 minutes as well. But let me give you a model now. How many of you have hired people? Have hired people to work for you? Just a simple yes would do. Okay, quite a few of you have hired people. Even if you haven't, the process would seem very logical because that's how we all make decisions. So let's say in an organization, there are 5 levels. You have an SVP. Let's can put in my pen here. You have an SVP, VP, director. You have, forgive the pen is not as great. Senior manager, and analyst. Analyst is ANA. So you have these 1 to 5. So let's say you want to figure out, you want to hire someone for a director level position. Okay. So this is your goal. You have a candidate, you say, is this guy fit for a director level? So you ask that person the first question. The person answers that question. Actually, let me just undo this. And you ask the person the first question, the person answers that question correctly. Ask him the second question, the person answers that correctly as well. You answer the third question, the person answers that correctly as well. Now, what are you going to do next? Are you going to ask a more difficult question or an easier question? A difficult question. Why? Because this person is kind of proven he's good enough for a director. The next question would be a VP level question, right? And then if the person gets that right, you probably ask another VP level question, gets that right, probably another VP level question, or you're going to ask an SVP level question. If on the other hand, this person gets this wrong, okay, and let's kind of see if we can remove this. And so if on the other hand, if the person got this question wrong, then you're going to probably ask another VP level question over here. And if the person got another question wrong in this case, then you're going to probably go back to director level questions as well. Does that make sense? The sequence, right? The GMAT works exactly the same way. It's not rocket science. A lot of people say, hey, the GMAT algorithm is the secret. It's not. Does anyone over here design algorithms or works in maths over here for a living? If you design algorithms, in many ways, what we do is we kind of estimate. We estimate what something would have been. And so if you design algorithms, you probably know of estimation theory, right? So if you know that, the GMAT's actually an amalgam of about 5 different engines that all they do is very basic estimation. And we're going to talk about that before. If you design algorithms, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even if you don't do it, if you know a bit of math, you'll know what I'm talking about. But what I'm trying to say is that the algorithm is very logical. On the other hand, let's kind of talk about the first 10 questions over here in this case. And I'm giving you an answer which I asked. Let's say the first question that I ask is an SVP level question. Remember, I'm still trying to hire a director level person. If the first question that I ask is an SVP question, if the second question that I ask for some reason is a VP question, then, and you get that wrong, then at that point, would I reject you as a director? No, not yet. No, you're right. Right? So the point that I'm trying to make is the first 10 questions that you're trying to say, you know, we have this thing, you've got to get, majority of the first 10 questions right. Yes. In simple words, it's true. But the logic behind that is because those questions usually, majority of the first 10 questions are director level questions over here. And if you're aiming for that 700, 750 score, which means you're truly aiming for that SVP score over here, if you can't even answer those director level questions, you're not going to get SVP level questions. That's just not going to happen. So if, on the other hand, the first question is an SVP level question, and about in 10% of the cases that does happen, you get it wrong, doesn't matter. Okay. So don't just focus on that first question. Focus on building ability. If you have the ability, if you truly are at an SVP level, get a director level question, you're going to answer it correctly. You're not going to make a mistake. If, on the other hand, you don't have the ability of a director and you get a director level question, you're not going to be able to answer it correctly, regardless of the amount of time you spend. It's all about ability. Does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, you can talk about those principles. Yeah. And what you really said over here, 100% in the first two sections, 43% in the third section, and 0% in the fourth, still got to keep 48. Why? Because the person got a good number of questions, proved to the test that they can answer questions correctly. So let's kind of remove this part over here. So this was the principle. I'm going to prove this principle with multiple data points, but I think we understand this really well over here. Both of them got different identical accuracies. On the GRE, both of them would be at the same point. On the GMAT, if I were to estimate, again, remember, I'm doing an estimate, this guy would be at a 70th percentile. This guy would probably be at a 35th percentile. And that's kind of where the play of ability is very different from the play of accuracy, or the GMAT very different from a CAT or the GRE. Okay. So if you want to ace the GMAT, they've got two challenges. One is make sure the test serves difficult questions to you. If you observe student 2 didn't even get difficult questions. So didn't even have the opportunity to answer difficult questions. Why? Because on the GMAT, there is this thing called a question picker. It only serves you questions of an appropriate difficulty level. Again, works very similar to how you would work if you were to hire someone. And student 2, on the other hand, got 5 questions. The least difficult question was at the average difficulty level, you can see over here, but every other question was above the average difficulty level in this case. Okay. So the first challenge is to make sure that you get difficult questions. The second challenge is, if you want to use the GMAT, is to consistently answer them correctly. Why? Because your score is governed by your demonstrated ability to answer questions correctly. Okay. Now, this was just in terms of principle. Here is some real data. This is data from GMAT Prep exam. For those of you who don't know what GMAT Prep is, pre-May 2018, there were no official GMAT mocks. Rather, it was the official GMAT mocks were served through a desktop software called the GMAT Prep software. This was a beautiful time when you didn't have to worry about internet connections. You didn't, and then the GMAT Prep software gave analytics that are way better than what the official GMAT mocks give. So these are two screenshots from this. The verbal section at that time was 41 questions. It was longer. And what you see over here are two students, and they're very similar with regards to their mistakes. All the red rectangles are question numbers where they made mistakes. The primary difference between these two students is that student 2 over here got the first 2 questions wrong. Now, I want to really look at this and say, how can things seem if you look at them through a lens of accuracy? If you purely looked at them through a lens of accuracy, you'd expect them to have very similar scores. The result is not very similar, but very, very different. Student 1 got a V43, which is 97th percentile, which means what the test told him is that you are among the top 6,000 students out there. Student 2 got a V32, which is 65th percentile. What the test told him was that there are 70,000 people who are at the same level or better than you. Okay. A lot of people would look at this and say, man, the GMAT's really harsh. How many of you are thinking like that? You say, man, the GMAT seems really harsh. Two questions and that ability is gone. It is unforgiving. Okay, look at, and this is where understanding a principle and applying a principle are two very different things, which is something that you'll learn on the GMAT. Now, if the GMAT were harsh, then let's kind of go over here. This guy got 97 percentile with 9 mistakes, almost a quarter of the questions wrong. Is that a harsh test? That you can get a 97 percentile while making, so many mistakes? No. It's not a harsh test. A lot of people think, okay, two more mistakes and I got this, but you don't understand the principle that the GMAT uses. And yes, no, it's not as unscientific as appraisals are. It's a very, very scientific test. Or so, and depends on how those 9 questions were incorrect. Absolutely, that's a really good response over here. And you have another data point: 9 mistakes with a V38. So you have V43, V38, and I think a V34 or so. And so you can really see 9 mistakes and different scores. Bottom line is you can make mistakes on the GMAT. Let's kind of map this to a model, and this is where knowing the model is really important. Okay, so let's kind of map our this guy's attempts on this piece over here. So you got the first question, median difficulty level, or median difficulty level means half the people get that question right, half the people get that question wrong. He got it wrong. Then he got the second question, which was a 30th percentile level, which means 70% of people get that question right. He still got that wrong. People who are quant nerds, what is the likelihood that a person who got a 50th percentile question wrong and a 30th percentile question wrong one after the other, a person who got A and B wrong one after the other, is at 90th percentile? What is that likelihood? If you do the probability calculation with a normal distribution there, it's actually going to be less than 1 in 10,000. So it's no surprise that the third question that this guy got was a 15th percentile question, which means 85% of people get that question right. And he got that right. The next question was a 20th, 25th percentile. Next question, 30th percentile, 35th, 40th, 50th. And so this guy's difficulty increased slowly. Okay. Student one, on the other hand, got the first question right, second question, third, fourth. By the time he was at the fifth, sixth, seventh question, he was already getting, very challenging questions, and he continued to answer them correctly. Okay. Conte says, how is the difficulty level of first question decided? So it's most of the times, I'm going to just simplify that answer. Most of the time, it's a medium difficulty level question. Sometimes it's going to be a fairly easy question. So again, the same way we had those 5 levels of when we were hiring, we had director, VP, SVP, senior manager, and analyst. So there are 5 difficulty levels here: medium, medium, hard, easy, medium, and easy. A majority of the time you'll have the first question over here. Sometimes you'll have it here, and very rarely it'll be over here. But and very rarely it'll be over as well. So the thing which is there is, in the first group of 8 or 9 questions, you'll have a mixed bag of questions where the average difficulty level would be medium. Now, that could be made up of having 1 or 2 hard questions, a majority medium, so 4 to 5 medium question, and 1 or 2 over here in this case. And then there's a possibility the first question could be a hard question, but the judgment's based on how you perform on this package. Okay. That's kind of how the algorithm works. It's not that I'm going to serve you 4 medium questions, then 4 hard and 4 very hard, and so it's not that. Although if it did that, it also get a very reasonable estimate of where you are. Okay. So if you were to really just look at this and say, hey, if how the hell do we explain this data? How does the GMAT make this judgment to really say, give this guy 97 percentile, give this guy 65th percentile? And the answer is ability scores. And as I said, ability is a comparative measure. So again, this is the verbal section of the GMAT. And what on the verbal section, you have three subsections, SC, CR, and RC. And each one of these three subsections gets an ability score. If you've seen an ESR, how many of you have seen an enhanced score report on the GMAT? You have one, good. So what the GMAT does is, based on how you respond in SC, how you respond in CR, and how you respond in RC, it calculates your ability. By combining those abilities, it actually creates a verbal score. So this score is an output of these ability estimates. Okay, so these are inputs, and this over here is output. Okay. And how do you calculate an ability in SC? By looking at the difficulty level of questions that you've answered correctly. Does the time taken to answer a question affect a score? Absolutely not. Okay, you're gonna get those questions answered in a minute. So hold on to those questions. Again, put the question in the Q&A part, please, not in the short answer part. Okay. So that's kind of how it works. Now, when you look at these two students through the lens of ability, this guy is a V32 guy, the same V43 guy. Do they look very different when you compare 95th percentile in SC versus 81st, 95th percentile in CR versus 66th, and 87th percentile in RC versus 59th percentile? And that's how it looks at it. In fact, what we did was we looked at about 4,000 ESRs. We collected these ability scores from 4,000 ESRs, which are the scores out of 60, which have one-on-one translation into that percentile score. And we ran a regression on those. So we said, okay, let's look at verbal score as an output, these scores as an input. We ran the regression, and what we got, and this is where your quant folks come in, our R square that we got for that regression was 99.46. Quant guys, how good is that R square for regression? 99.46%. Okay, it doesn't get any better. If we had 2,500 or so, we probably would have gotten into 99.9 or so. Yes. So we actually did some further analysis. I'm not going to go into the math of it. If you connected with me on my LinkedIn, you'll look up my background as an algorithm designer. I used to work for Nokia in the year 2000. When you look at your cell phones, we're talking about 5G right now. I wrote one of the core algorithms on the physical layer, which is where the radio works, and on 3G and 4G or so. So yeah, but again, I'm not going to focus on explaining all of the math, but the piece which is there is that there are 5 subsections which are there on the GMAT. Okay, 5 independent subsections. All right, and on the quant you have 2: algebra, geometry, and arithmetic. On the verbal you have 3. We've talked about those 3 over here, and each of these subsections is independent. And let me explain this, which means how you do in SC has no correlate bearing on the difficulty level of question that you'd be served on CR or RC. In other words, you can get a 5 percentile score in SC and a 90th percentile score in CR, and a 90th percentile score in RC, or vice versa. Similarly, you could get a 15 percentile score in algebra and an 80th percentile score in arithmetic. Okay. All of these are independent subsections. In fact, if you read the description in OG, what you're going to find, and then that's where you really just see that. That's why you're seeing very easy CR and harder RC. So you must have been doing well in RC and not as well in CR. Okay. The second thing, there's this notion RC has more weight, CR has less, because there are fewer CR questions there. Doesn't matter. And that's one of those things. When we did that regression, the coefficient for CR, the coefficient for SC, the coefficient for RC, they were very, very similar. I mean, to the extent one was 0.32, the other one was 0.332, and the third one was something like 0.327, 328 or so. So practically, their weights were equal. Okay. Some people say, why is it that you only need 9 to 10 CR questions? Because that's all that it takes for the GMAC to get a good estimate of what your ability is. Okay. The third thing is you need a target ability in each subsection. That's really important. Why is this important? As you're going to see as you go towards your study plan, each one of you has some natural strengths and natural weaknesses, and so depending on, and there are many ways to get to for example, a V38. There are about 20 ways in which you can get to a V38. The shortest path would be to maximize your strengths and then to only work enough on your weakness. Why? Because if you have an area of strength, it's easier to improve on that area. And if you have an area of weakness, then that's going to take longer, but you still have to improve to a certain degree, not probably to the same degree where you want to take your strength, but only to a certain degree. And that's why you need a target ability in each subsection. Okay. Now the piece which is I think really important, which I want to just focus on, is regardless of what you're talking about, whether you're talking about SC, whether you're talking about quant, or whether you're talking about number properties in quant versus word problem, the sequence of actions that you go through, when we say the process of building ability, the sequence of actions that you go through in each subsection is identical. Or in other words, the process of building ability it doesn't change regardless of whether you're talking about RC or whether you're talking about probability. It's just, that's we as humans build ability or so. And as I said, each one of you has natural strengths and weaknesses. So your starting points for each one of you would be different. I mean, again, for those of you who are good in probability, think of it as, if you were to even divide each one of you in SC, you have 10 groups over here starting from below 10 percentile to above 90th percentile. In CR, you could have those 10 groups. And similarly, you have 5 subsections. Look at the number of possible combinations that you could have in this case. It'd be what? If you have 10 groups in each and you have 5 subsections, how many possible combination of starting points can we get? Mathematical question. You have 10 groups in SC of starting scores, 10 groups in CR, 10 groups in RC, 10 groups in arithmetic, 10 groups in algebra geometry. How many possible combination of starting points can you get? No one wants to answer? 10 to the power 5. Not 50. 10 to the power 5. Yes. That's why you need a personalized study plan. Toshika says, are e-GMAT questions more difficult than the actual GMAT? I'm getting a scale score of 49 in quants on an official practice test, but 57% weighted accuracy. So, again, remember, you have to look at accuracy to ability translation. If you get to a 60th percentile accuracy in hard questions on the e-GMAT platform, you get to about a 70th percentile to 80th percentile ability, which is kind of what a Q49 is. Don't translate that 49 in quant to you've got to know that translation. So, Toshika, good question overall. And again, this is exactly the kind of thing you write to a strategy team if it's not there. No, real GMAT's not that tricky. I think the point really is I want to explain how the GMAT works so that you can study the right way. Do you need to know how that works? No. You need to study the right way and you'll get a good score. The real GMAT's very logical. And again, remember, I'm someone who's selling a prep course, and if it were super tricky, you'd buy my courses. But I don't want to give you the false thing because anyhow, people come and buy our courses. Yeah. And if you're stuck at 710, right to the team, and they'll build that personalized study plan. We've helped a lot of people go from that 710 to 760 because of the same analytics. We figure out where you need help. We kind of build those personalized study plans. We give you your milestones, and 710 to 740 is usually a 30-day affair. All right, let's kind of go back. So, I mean, really important question that you have to ask yourself is, when you're starting your preparation, ask yourself, where are you in SCCR and RC? Or so, and arithmetic and algebra. And for those of you who say, I don't know my starting scores, take a Sigma-X mock and then figure out your starting abilities. That, other than getting your ESR, that's the only way that that you can determine your starting abilities. Okay. Now, coming back to it, GMAT's a forgiving test. You can make a mistake or make many mistakes on the GMAT. Here's an example of a student who improved from a V17 to a V40. For those of you who said you weren't able to download an ESR, you don't know what an ESR is, I'm going to share an ESR as well with you. What you can see over here is this guy got a V40. This is the verbal screenshot of his ESR. You can see it's built up of 3 ability scores: 94th percentile in SC, 73rd percentile in RC, and 79th percentile in critical reasoning. Okay. Now, this guy made a ton of mistakes, but he made mistakes only when he got to difficult parts of the test. First group, where the median difficulty the median difficulty of this group, first group of 10 questions, is about a 50th percentile. You got 88% of the questions correct, indicating to the test he's ready for more challenging questions. Again, if you ask someone 9 director level question, the guy gets 8 correct, you're going to ask a more challenging question, right? The guy got more challenging questions, VP level. He basically got 70% of them correct. The test then gave him SVP level questions. This is where he started to make more mistakes. He got 57%, continued to get the SVP level questions, got half of them right. As a result, was able to get to that 91st percentile. Can you see how that hiring, the parallel to hiring someone works really well when you're looking at an ESR? And again, you can see he made half the mistakes here, half the mistakes here, still got that 91st percentile. And someone said V38, I got 9 mistakes. You can really just see how this guy with more mistakes got a higher score, because the mistakes were made at a very different place. And again, of course, this is a 41 question test as well. Now, your ESR is better, that's good. Now, the question is, out of these first blocks, what kind of questions did you make mistakes on? You would have missed easier, not harder. If you miss hard, the test is okay. If you miss easy, the test penalizes. Going from 640 to 720 in 20 days possible if you put in 100 hours? Yes. Where to put in 100 hours? That's where our strategy team comes in. And of course, the data. Okay. But bottom line is, as long as you have ability, you can make mistakes. Which question do you want me to address? Again, please put the question in the Q&A pod. Mansi is there sitting idle, and she doesn't have the opportunity to answer questions. So if you put those questions there, she'd be able to answer those. Okay. So let's talk about these 3 questions. Okay. And I want you to put your answers as in the format YYN or YNY. So Y means yes, N means no. So there are 3 questions you can put in a single go: YYN, YYY, YNY. Let's see what you guys are saying. All right. Sorry about that. I had to turn the fan on. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's close to 100 degrees right now, Fahrenheit, not Celsius. So let's look at this. The questions are: do the first 10 questions matter? Should you approach them differently? And should you spend more time on the first 10? Let's see what do I say. Do they matter? Yes, very clearly they do. We talked about this. Should you approach them differently? Absolutely not. So this is N here. Should you spend more time? That's N as well. And again, the whole principle why I say that is because it's a game of ability. Okay. And Mansi, you have a bunch of questions. Please continue to answer those. The principle over here is that you can make mistakes, still get a high GMAT score as long as you make those mistakes on hard questions. So let's kind of look at, let's assume you are a 90th percentile student. And the thing that I want to make sure you understand is you lose or win on the GMAT during your prep phase. That 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 um, that your performance on your test is merely an expression of your preparation. Um, Anyone plays, semi-pro sports here? Okay, quite a few people play. Now, isn't your performance in a tournament dependent on your preparation than anything else? Always, right? It's 90% of it is preparation and 10% of it is what you do on that day. Now, you could screw up on a particular day, but in a tournament, when you have 10, 12, 15 tests, um, you know, or 10, 12, 15 matches, which is why if you think about the Soccer World Cup, you think about Cricket World Cup, they give you the opportunity, or IPL for that matter, they give you the opportunity to come back. Why? Because you want to truly get someone who's well prepared. So if you truly are this 90th percentile student, then this is kind of who you are. A 90th percentile student will get a medium difficulty question right 90% of the time. We'll get a medium hard question right 80% of the time, and we'll get a hard question right 65% of the time. Okay. All right. So at that point, sorry, I was distracted by the question. I'm going to answer that question later on. So tell me one thing. Let's first, I'm going to answer the quant part, but I'm going to erase this part over here. So please forgive me. If you truly are a 90th percentile guy, and if you get a medium level question in the first 10, are you going to answer that correctly? Are you going to answer that incorrectly? I'm sorry. No. By virtue of who you are, most likely not. There's just a 10% chance, right? Now, what happens when you give a question special treatment? When you say, I'm not going to approach the question my usual way, but I'm going to kind of give it special treatment. You actually throw these numbers out of on a toss. Okay, you can throw these numbers out. Right? Has it happened with anyone? You approach a question, you're extra careful on it, and you go from the correct answer to the incorrect answer. Has that happened? Yes. That's when this 10% becomes 20%. That's when this 20% actually goes to 40, and this 35% goes to 60. The more difficult a question, the more impact it has when you change your approach. Okay. All right. Takeaways that I want you to have is, if you truly during your preparation phase are at 90th percentile, you will likely do just well on the first block in your regular go. All right. And if you make one or two mistakes, you're likely going to make them over here, because the first block will have one or two hard questions. As I said, it's a bag of questions, and that's okay. All right. Now, the person who asked about the quant piece, yes, we are known for verbal because most of our students need help in verbal, but I'm going to share some stats later on in this webinar where you're going to see we accounted for about 70% of all Q49 plus scores since we launched our Quant 2.0. So, you are more than well covered on the quant side of the stuff. 70% of all Q49 plus scores. And this includes, the 30% includes TDP, GMAT, Crack Verbal, Empower, GMAT, Veritas, Prep, Manhattan, Prep, everyone else. So everyone makes mistakes. It's just where they make mistakes. Magdalena, who I think got into Wharton, I've got to get her back on a call. She got a 780 or a V47. She still made mistakes on verbal. Okay. Pratik got a V47, 760 score. He's going to start at Booth. He still made mistakes on verbal. And And so I mean, it's just where you make mistakes. And the thing which is there is, if you look at their stats on the e-GMAT platform, their accuracy on hard questions was about 70 to 73%, which again puts them in that 95th, 97th percentile bracket. Okay. So takeaways: focus on building ability. Approach all questions the way you do in practice. Really, really important. Don't change anything. I mean, you win based on your practice. You win based on what your preparation. Okay, not based on what you do on the test. Let's talk about this. Now, I know a lot of you had questions about your study plan. How long will it take for you? How many hours should you be putting in? The next section will really talk about this. Okay. So tell me, what does a personalized study plan do? Can I explain the purpose of IR and AWS section? Great question. Can you park it till the end? I'll be happy to explain that. Okay. So Vasudev, please, that'd be great. All right. What does a study plan do? Let's get that one out of the way. Attack your weakness. That helps you focus on your weakness, improve your weakness, manage time and effort, optimize preparing time and score, counter weakness, strength, weakness, opportunity, threat analysis, what? Accountability. All right. Save a whole lot of prep time. Definitely, it does do that. Okay. While you're putting in those excellent answers, let me answer another question. How will the strategy team help you enhance or enable you to improve your score? Your strategy team is composed of people who've done one of three things. Either they're data analysts, and by the way, everyone's taught data analysis. Those who are not natural data analysts go through about a 20-day long training on data analysis, or they're students who've done well on the GMAT. And or they're really smart individuals who have achieved 90th percentile in at least one subsection. Even when we hire someone, we actually make sure they achieve 90th percentile on one subsection. Only then they get on student emails. So how can they help you? Bottom line is, they're people who know what it takes to succeed, and what's the right process to success. So when you tell them, hey, I'm not doing this, they know why you're likely not doing it. They know where you made a mistake during your prep journey. They can point you back to that prep point. They can ask you to really just say, focus on first building those skills, then achieving these milestones. And that's why if you go read our reviews, they'll talk about, hey, this person recorded this video, told me exactly what to do. I did that, and it helped. Okay, so what does a study plan do in the e-GMAT context? It answers three questions. Okay, it tells you your path to reach your target GMAT score. Think of think about, let's say everyone wants to reach Mount Everest. Depending on where you want to go from, your journey on Google Maps is going to be different. Your study plan is like that Google Maps. Okay, going on with that piece over here, it also tells you how much time and effort you need to put in. Some of you ask, how long will I need to go from that V30 to V40 or so? It'll tell you how long would you need, and then it'll tell you where you need to put in that effort. It answers those three questions. Okay. I like the panel for the diet plan, nutrition plan, and so it's very, very good panel. I absolutely love that. Thank you for those insights. I learned from you guys just as much as you guys learned from me. Okay. So just to explain what a study plan does, I'm going to give you two examples. Examples of two students who aim for high scores. So Ayush was aiming for a 750. He actually was a 670 to 750. Also, someone asked 710. Your journey probably is going to be very similar. Rafaela went from a 600 to a 730, if I remember correctly, or so. But again, 730 versus 750. Rafaela went to Harvard. Ayush went to Columbia. Okay. So let's kind of see how we build that study plan overall. So the first thing you do is you actually take a Sigma X mock. So Rafaela took that, and let's just make sure I have the right color. She got a 600 with a Q36 and a V36. So strong verbal, not a strong quant. Okay. Let's just bring back my annotations over here. So she took a Sigma X mock. Sigma X mock gives you your ability scores. So these were her starting ability scores based on that. So this is the V36. That's what it was composed of. This is a Q36. Now, what are your observations from here? I want you to look at these data points and tell me, what do you observe? Needs to work on RC. Quant's weak. RC is weak too. Yes. What else? She's like me. Okay, good. CR strong, SC is strong too. Yeah, so really strong CR, really strong SC around the 90th percentile, RC around that 40th percentile. Quant needs work, but algebra geometry is way better at that than in arithmetic. So what we do is we get these data points. These are starting points. Okay, and the thing that you want to make sure is that hey, she needs to. So someone who's starting at a 500 may have this 15 percentile score, not just in arithmetic, but also in critical reasoning and in sentence correction. But the journey that Rafaela went through in arithmetic, you'll have to go through on these subsections as well. So, but it's exactly the same journey that you'll have to do multiple times. The parallel that I would say is, it's just, you're doing the same workout as someone else is, you're just doing it longer. Okay. So we get those starting points. Then we have this AI development AI tool, which actually has a neural network in it and a database of thousands and thousands of uh, 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 ability scores from ESRs. And it uses based on the neural network that's been put in there, it really creates the shortest path to your success. So we put this data points in there, and based on this, what it said was, hey, you should aim for that 85th percentile in RC. And because you're better in algebra geometry, let's try and get you to that 83rd percentile over there. And then you only need to improve to that 57th percentile in arithmetic. Now, just based on these transitions, what can you infer? Remember, these were her starting points. This is where she needs to be. And what you're going to really find is what programs do is what humans do in a very logical way. That's all they are. They're a translation of human, a person's logical thinking. No, so what do you infer over here? Making the weakness perfect was not what was required. She's not required to get to an 80th percentile in arithmetic. Okay, we tackled it last. We left this over here. Why? Because it's risky to go beyond a 90th percentile in any subsection. You may be there, but that may not translate into actual success on the real test day. So it's a risk averse approach over here. And so we took RC to an 85th percentile. We didn't care to take SC to a 97, 98, 99. Now, if she gets there on the test day, that's a bonus. But we want to be risk averse, so that's why we took RC to this 85th percentile. We tried to push algebra to that 83rd percentile, and then we said, let's kind of focus on building arithmetic to that 57th percentile. Now, does she have to answer the hardest questions in arithmetic to get to that 57th percentile? Does she have to consistently answer the hardest questions? No. But in algebra geometry, she probably does, right? And you can really see right from that initial planning stage, right from that day zero stage, you can draw some make some good decisions that can help you focus your energy on the right areas. Okay. So, and it's really important to be strategic about these decisions. Really, really important. Why? Because each one of you has a finite amount of prep time, especially with deadlines approaching, and you want to make sure you focus your energy there. Okay. Now, the next thing that the PSP does is it generates time estimates for that improvement. Okay. So here again, you probably can't see for RC, and when you get the PDF, you'll be able to see she needed to spend 2.5 weeks of dedicated time, given what she put in as her time commitments. I think she put in 2 hours on weekday, 2.5 hours to 3 hours on weekends. So she'll need a dedicated effort of about 2 hours, about 17 days to improve her ability. From arithmetic, she needed 2 weeks to go from 15 to 57. And for algebra, she needed about 2 weeks of dedicated effort to go from 49th to 83rd percentile or so. Again, not a whole lot of effort here in SC and CR, but she still had to stay current. Okay. then it really says, okay, this is something you know this. Let's kind of make sure that we understand what is it that you're going to study, because based on these cutoffs or based on this plan, we have to figure out what you want to do this. And this is where I want to give you a mini tutorial on three stages of learning. For those of you who are e-GMAT students, we have an entire course called Getting Started, where we talk about three stages of learning extensively, where we talk about metrics or so. And in how do you know your current level before buying? Take a Sigma X mock. Or you don't even need to take a, you know your current level post that. So so um, so yeah, let's go back to three stages of learning. And this is where I said the process of building ability for every subsection remains the same. And so I want to just talk about what are these three stages of learning. And for those of you who are into sports, for those of you who are teachers, would kind of recognize this is how we learn anything, by the way. It's just that we've formalized it into concrete stages, and then we have metrics for each stage, and we have feedback points for each stage to ensure that you've done that well. So the first stage is when you're someone who's starting at a very low percentile. Clearly, this means you don't know the concepts, you don't know how to apply the concepts. So you've got to learn concepts and application. Okay, that's your first stage. Most people who start at low ability scores spend about 70% of their time over here in the e-GMAT world. Okay, in most other courses world, they only spend 20% of their time over here, and then they go on and practice questions, and which is why they don't succeed. In the e-GMAT world, you spend 70% of your time here. The second stage, once you've learned the concepts, you have a really good idea on how to approach those, you actually master application. You refine your ability to apply such that you achieve a certain percentile. And then, even when you've mastered application, you still are not that at that 90th percentile. You still have some weaknesses. Those weaknesses are very specific to each one of you, because each one of you has some natural proclivities and some natural and so that's where data comes in really useful in Scholaranium. This is where data in our Blitzkrieg platform is useful. This is where data in our Scholaranium is useful to help you get to this point. e-GMAT students, what do we call this stage? Master application. We have a specific name in the e-GMAT portal for this. Cementing, yes. Yes, and make sure you know your cementing metrics, so you're not aiming for 100% accuracy in hard questions or even 80% accuracy. So what ability scores do you lead to? If you do stage one well, you can achieve at least 50th 55th percentile ability. And again, for those of you who seems this is low, again, remember, 70% of your time is spent here, uh, but it makes you ready for that. If you do stage one well, this is about 2 days. If you don't do stage one well, you probably have to come back, revise this, and then do this. Really important. Okay. But if you do stage, once you master application, you achieve at least the 70th percentile. Many people even go to the 80th percentile over here. And from this point on, you look at your Scholaranium analytics, you look at what are your natural weaknesses, focus on this, and then go from there. Now, how long does stage one take? Depends on where you're starting from. If you are someone who's starting at a 45th percentile, stage one will take you about 25 to 30 hours. If you're starting at a 15th percentile, stage one could take you 50 hours. Okay, it's not the same for every individual. Remember, does it not make logical sense? If you're weak, you're going to take longer, right? Most courses are not built that way. We built our course this way right from 2010. Okay, now based on this, we really can tell you what you need not study, what you need to study. So again, the legend's really important. This means you already know this, you need not study. This means area of focus. This means because you're not aiming for high abilities, you don't need to worry about it. This is also need not study, but for a very different reason. Not because you have ability, but not because you don't need ability there. Okay. So for Rafaela, okay, RC was a weakness. So she needs to focus on stage 1 everywhere, stage 2 everywhere, and she needs to maintain that. In algebra, she was aiming for that 83rd percentile. Refining to perfection is really important too. In SCNCR, she only needed to maintain this. So in SCNCR, Rafaela did not even go do our course. All she did was she focused on, she actually did cementing because we said, hey, let's kind of just confirm that, and she refined to perfection because we still wanted to give her the opportunity to maximize that, even though we didn't take this into account. Yep. Valeria has a question. Mansi has started the wrong way. Should you change or stick to the current plan? Valeria, write to the support team. They'll, with your e-GMAT ID, they'll look at your account. They'll give you a personalized study plan. So do that. Okay. Ayush, very different student. Started at 670. You can see his quant and verbal scores, and you can see what he ended up with. Okay. So starting abilities. Let's get that. Your observations from his starting ability. What do you observe? SC NCR needs work. Quant's really good. He's a quant heavy guy, yes. RC is pretty good too. So we put that data in the PSP. Quant remained the same. You know, these are Q50 scores. So we said, let's not worry about Q51. Let's kind of improve that RC to that 90th percentile because the guy has that ability. And then let's kind of see where do we want to bring that that SC and CR. And again, SC is usually easier than CR overall. So we brought SC to the 94th, CR to the 84th percentile or so. This guy wanted to get to a 98th percentile, 98th percentile or so. So what are his time estimates? His time estimates are about 8 days in RC. He was going to put a lot of time, so about 2 weeks in CR and about 2.5 weeks in SC or so. Those are his time estimates or so. Okay. So again, same 3 stages of learning, and let's kind of look at what do he not need to study because he already knows this, where does he need to focus on, and what's not required given the fact that he's not aiming for those high abilities. And this is where SC and CR he had to do all. He had to study all of SC and CR. That's where he focused on. If you watch his interview on our YouTube channel, you'd see that he's going to talk about it. RCB made him do cementing because we wanted to improve him to that 90th percentile, but everything else he was just maintaining. Okay. So really important pieces with regards to, two people, 600, 670 starting points and very similar target scores, but their focus was very, very different. So Ayush spent 2.5 weeks or 2.7 weeks in SC. Rafaela did not have to spend any time, a ton of time in CR, did not have to spend any time. Why? Because of the starting abilities. In RC, both of them had to spend some time, but Rafaela had to spend twice as much time. And in Quant, Rafaela had to spend a lot more time because of her higher starting abilities. And that's kind of that personalized path is what PSP does. Could you get an idea of the profiles of Ayush and Rafaela? Yes, they are there on a YouTube channel. If you really Google Rafaela e-GMAT Harvard Business School, you'll be able to see her interview. Similarly, Ayush Columbia e-GMAT, you'll be able to see his interview as well. So again, I think this is there. She had to start from basics in quant and RC, and Ayush had to start from basics in SC and CR. Okay. So they've not even started studying yet. But look at the kind of personalization that they've experienced. And this is something that you want to be able to do on day zero, day one of your preparation. You should have these charts right in front of you. You should be able to see that journey to your study plan. Okay. Now, I said I'm going to tell you some stats overall, and so the thing I want to tell you is, I know most of you are aiming for that score of 730, but there will be times when you'd be disheartened. You'd say, hey, let me just aim for the 700, 710 because I am tired. Has this happened with anyone over here? As someone who's been putting in for effort for 2 to 3 months, you get tired, and then you really say, let's just 700 seems good enough, because people do get into top schools with 700. And yes, the answer is yes. People do get into top schools, but they have those other capabilities. Um, so yeah. So because we've delivered so much success, these our students are truly passionate about e-GMAT. They give us a lot of data. So last year we did this exercise where we talked to about 500 of our students. Their scores were in the range of 690 to 780, if I remember, and there were enough students in every group overall, but 500 students in all, and so there's some interesting things that we found. Okay, when it comes to M7 admits, yes, there are people who in the 700 to 730 bracket who got into M7 schools, but their acceptance rate, so people who applied versus people who got in, was just about 13%. On the other hand, when you look at that 740 or higher bracket, their acceptance rate, not everyone got in who applied, but their acceptance rate was 28%. And you really just look at this, it's about that 700 to 730 versus 740 or higher. The chances, more than double when it comes to an admission. Okay. Now, through anecdotal examples, you probably are aware of it, but you're not going to find the statistical data point anywhere else. No one just has the numbers. Okay, when it comes to success. Now, with regards to scholarships, people who had a 740 plus score got into M7 schools. 45% of them had scholarships, which I think is huge. 740 plus scorers who got into US top 20 schools, 82% of them had scholarships. And overall, combined, you're looking at about a 62% number. Okay. How many of you are more motivated towards that 740 plus score when you look at this? And it's talking about a scholarship, you're looking at, about 50 to 80 grand as a scholarship. And a lot of these people were also, close to a full ride. Okay. If you look at it, about a month back, we did an interview with one of our students who got 110, 140K. I don't remember what his number was from Harvard Business School. Similarly, from Wharton, someone got 90K or so. ISB, so one thing which is there, Akash, is that European B schools rarely give scholarships. I have not seen ISB give scholarship to more than 3 people a year. So ISB scholarships practically non-existent, regardless of who you are. I think they give more scholarships to low GMAT scorers who are international students than essentially people who apply from India with super high GMAT scores or so. Canadian B schools also give out some scholarships, etc. So most of these are merit-based scholarships. Yeah, 90% of the scholarships in the US. So US B schools have about $300 million of scholarship budget combined. That's our estimate, and 90% of that is merit-based. You're not talking about Rhodes Scholarship or one of those special needs or special background kind of scholarships. Merit-based purely. They're not even need-based, which means that if you merit it, you may be very wealthy, you'd still get a scholarship. I got multiple full rides. I didn't pay a single penny for my MBA. Okay. Oxford scholarships, don't know a whole lot about them. I'm sure we've written about them on our blog. We have a team that works with this. Merit is not just the GMAT. Scholarships are based on actually 3 things. So GMAT's about 30-35%. Your likability during the interview is another 30%. I wish it were just the GMAT, but I know it's not. But it has this pretty big thing. So GMAT's about 30-35. Your likability during the interview is about 30-35 as well, and then just your background and the uniqueness that you bring to it. Yeah, it's sort of holistic, yes. Now, this was a killer piece, which is some people say, I'm happy with a 740. Why the hell do I need to get to a 760? And this is very difficult because 740 to 760 is can be taxing, and it's very difficult to justify to yourself, to people around you, why you should get to that 760. And this is a research that I really wanted to do, to say, how much difference does a 760 make? Because I've seen it makes a difference through anecdotal cases. Okay, and the median scholarship amount just went up by about what was it, about 40 or 35 odd K or so, or about 65%, 63% or so, as written over here. Okay. So that is I think something very interesting. Um, Not the number of years of work experience when it comes to scholarship, but the quality of work experience, the contribution essentially as to what you would make. All right. So, bottom line, a 730 or higher score, it can be huge when it comes to when you think about your life post your MBA, it can have a huge impact. Okay. Talked about 700 plus scores. So when you look at the data, these are reported scores on GMAT Club, where every score is validated by an official score report that where the link comes from MBA.com. It's not a PDF; it's a live link that is used to validate. And what you'd find if you were to look at 2021 stats is that we accounted for 63% of all 700 plus scores. The only other company that had a significant contribution was Target Test Prep. And when you look at our Q49 plus scores post Quant 2.0, you can see how many Q49 scores did our students report versus other folks reported. In fact, if you go to a YouTube channel, you're going to look at the kind of technological innovations that we released in 2021, and then you're going to find other companies don't even talk about those. We have a 40%, actually a 47% team right now, but 12 people are full-time tech in there. And this is something when you want to evaluate test prep companies, look at go to their LinkedIn pages, look at the kind of people who work there, and look at what functions they work in, and that's kind of where you would see that number 55 is not accurate as of now, because I think there's some old folks who left e-GMAT and they still have e-GMAT on their profile. So there's about 47 people right now that work. And at e-GMAT, what you're going to find is, three functions dominate folks who work at e-GMAT. One is tech, the other is strategy, and the third is SME. Okay. So, and again, you look at other prep companies, you're going to see way more people in sales and marketing. We also have people in sales and marketing, but as a percentage, way less. Okay, and you'd also see evidence on our YouTube channel. Actually, this is closer to that 250 mark right now. We have case studies that of scholarships where people talk about how they got a scholarship. I think this number is more around that 25 million mark right now, and B schools journeys, we have about 54, 55 B schools journeys right now, or so. And this is the world's largest connection of everything out there. So we're talking about GMAT success stories, MBA scholarships, or so. Shri says, does experience in a related field make a difference in terms of scholarship? Not so much. It's about your contribution. So it's, if you, for example, let me just take a parallel. Let's say you are a data engineer at Google who works on machine learning. Really good. So if you think about it, really good profile. On the other hand, if in your interview, if it so comes out that, hey, you'd be a good candidate for the school, but you're not going to coach a whole lot, you're not going to talk about, you're not going to be able to explain machine learning in a very simplistic way to other students, you're likely not going to get a scholarship, or not going to likely to get as big a scholarship. On the other hand, if you're able to simplify that, how machine learning works and in a way, and how it could apply in various businesses, and then get that out from you in the interview, um, then yes, you are an asset to the school. Does that make sense? Mm, right? And it's about the benefit to the school. No, it doesn't make sense, or does it? Do we make admissions and SOP services? No, we don't do that. It's just that, the volume of students that we deal with, admissions is such a personalized experience that we can't do justice to for example, 5,000 students in a year. Just don't have enough good people to hire, by the way. And so we chose not to do this, even though, as you can see, we know a lot about it. Oh, can it be? It probably can be automated. Admissions, not automated. Our prep is also not automated, given the number of people that we have. It's personalized, and admissions can be personalized. We just haven't gotten around to doing that. Okay. Um, Okay, let's kind of get into how to build ability. And then, AK, I'd be happy to answer these questions about profile towards the end. Okay. So, what is it that we've learned so far? You need that high score. We know that. We know that to get that high score, you've got to build ability. Personal study plan is the shortest way to build ability. And then, if you want to execute on that, you've got to understand the stages of learning. Why? Because that way, if you have a target ability score, you can get there for certain. Um, Now, people have this, yet they're stuck, and there's some EG matters who are stuck as well. I want to ask this: how many of you, despite putting in effort, are still stuck at that 80th percentile or 60th percentile ability? And it could be in any subsection. Many of you are. That's why you are here in this webinar to begin with. And and for those of you who've worked with one of our SMEs, who worked with one of our experts, what you would really know is 60th percent 90th percentile is not so much about smartness, it's a lot about habits and attitude, and I'm going to talk about those habits and attitude on the next in the next few slides, and you're going to really see that if you truly want to achieve that 90th percentile, you need to deserve that 90th percentile through those habits and attitude. Okay. Just to put some more metrics around here, 60th percentile means there are 80,000 people who are just as good or better than you. Let's kind of talk about just sentence correction. Why? Because we have next session as sentence correction. So you've spent about 40 hours on exclusively on sentence correction. Your starting ability was at 30th percentile. You're now at 60th percentile. The capability is very similar to someone who's gone to that 90th percentile as well. So the 90th current 90th percentile student, current 60th percentile student, you can see the 90th percentile means you're among the top 20,000 students out there. Okay, now a 90th percentile student achieves GMAT sentence correction in a very different way than a 60th percentile does. Why? Because a 90th percentile student thinks about this as, hey, if you want to be among the top 10 percentile, I've got to plug all the holes in my ability to answer SC questions. Okay. So their approach to those 40 hours that we're talking about, the way they put in is very different. A 60th percentile student thinks that, hey, I've got to learn these grammar concepts in these 8 groups. We'll start from subject verb, and for him or her, meaning is an error type. That person really looks at approaches questions using splits. They read a question, look at what are the splits in the answer choices, kind of narrow it down to splits, and then selects the correct answer. When they're learning, and they spend about 30% of the time learning. If you've gone through if you've read a book, uh, they'd spend about 30% of the time reading a book. If you've gone through an alternate course, 30% of the time would be spent on going through the lessons on a course, and then 70% of the time would be spent on practicing official questions or questions from the course, or practicing questions on the OG. And during this 30% of the time, you get about 7 to 10 feedback points overall. How many of you think, this is kind of what your journey looks like when it comes to the context of sentence correction? Where you kind of think of SC as those that are groups. You kind of focus on the splits based approach, where you spend a ton of time. How many of you think your journey looks like this, and you're stuck at 60th percentile? Come on, honesty. Okay. A 90th percentile student thinks of this in a very different fashion. A 90th percentile worries about sentence structures and says, hey, when it comes to GMAT SC, I want to make sure I master the skill of understanding how sentence structures lead to lead to a logical meaning, and how I can construct those sentence structures. Yes, those sentence structures may have errors in these areas, and I need to know those errors, but I've got to really understand the logical linkages between those sentence structures. For them, meaning is not an error type. They start with understanding the intended meaning and then move on to error types. They get a ton more feedback. Why? Because that's kind of where they're learning all of these sentence structures. As a result, they spend about 60% of their time learning, which is stage one, and 40% of their time in stages two and three. Very, very different architecture that they go through. Okay. And the piece why this person gets to that 90th percentile is because GMAT SC tests these sentence structures. Now, some of you may argue, but there are some of these people who also get to that 90th percentile. How the hell does that happen? The reason why that happens is it's two things. One is either they have a natural ability, which means their starting ability is not 30th percentile, or instead of spending 40 hours, they spend 100 to 130 hours and get to that 90th percentile, but definitely not in 40 hours. Okay. So let's kind of see how is that different. How these two architectures lead to different ways of approaching questions. So what I want to do is I want to give you an SC question. I want you to approach this question the way you would approach an SC question on the test. Um, and and what I want to do is, since I don't want to time you, I am going to I want you to look at to select this option which is still solving. I want 40 people to say still solving, and then when you guys choose an option other than still solving, or 80% of you choose an option other than still solving, I'm going to call time. Okay, I have 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 35, 40. Perfect. I have 40 people who've chosen still solving. Let me remove broadcast results, and here is the sentence for you. Good luck, guys. I'm going to mute myself, and then let's answer this question. that? Can you guys hear me now? Let me just clear all answers. Can you hear me now? Perfect. Sorry about that. Somehow my microphone was gone. But the good news is we can all hear, you can all hear me now. That's good. Okay, so let's broadcast results and let's see how you guys did. The poll's already ended. Um, this is how you guys did. Choice C, most popular choice. Choice E is very popular. Choice D is popular as well. Very few people chose choice A. Choice B, somewhat popular, not as popular overall. And my apologies once again about this. So, how did you feel about this question when you solving this? Good, medium hard, good, doable, between C and D, fairly easy, intimidating at first. Okay. All right. I hate heavy ones. I actually love heavy ones because, and I'm not an SC expert, just to be very clear. At e-GMAT, I do really well with quant. I do really well with CR and RC. SC, I can get by. I know how to get to the right answers. I'm not the best instructor when it comes to SC. I'm not Pile, just to be very clear. But thank you for that feedback. And why did I remove this? Yes, we need this over here. Sorry about that. So let's kind of see how we would do this question overall uh, in this. The fonts are tiny. You can actually, I think you can customize the fonts to your needs. So you can do bigger fonts in Adobe. And my apologies if the Beatrice, if the fonts are tiny. Not on the presentation, but I'm going to really make sure that the fonts are bigger. How about now? Are the fonts better? Good. Okay. So let's kind of look at this. Is this a 700 level? I'll answer that question. Okay. Are these fonts legible right now? Perfect. So let's kind of look at this. Now, this is a long sentence. We all know this, completely underlined. And to do this, and I said, remember, GMAT SC is about sentence structure. So we're going to kind of get those sentence structure out of it and and make sure that we understand how these sentence structures link to each other. So we're going to pause at various points to do this. So the church coined the date February 14th as Valentine's Day. Why did it coin? Because it had an ulterior motive. With an ulterior motive, that's what the author wants us to say, to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia. That aspect is claimed by a few experts. Then the author says, but it is celebrated on this date to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. That is the more prevalent belief. So the moment you think about this, I mean, the first thing you've got to ask yourself, even before worrying about what errors exist in this sentence, is what does the author want to do with this? Or what is it you're trying to achieve with this particular sentence? And the first thing you'd say is, hey, the author wants to tell you there are two claims about why February 14th is celebrated as Valentine's Day. Claim one says that, hey, the church did it and they had an ulterior motive to do it. So with a specific motive. Claim two is that it was done to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. Also, the third aspect is claim one is by entity one, which is a few experts. Claim two is by entity two, which is a more prevalent belief. Without even looking at errors, I have to do this. Why? Because that's what the objective that the author wants to achieve from this. So I want you to tell me when you were uh, solving this question, and I'm going to put in a multiple response poll over here. Tell me which of the aspects of this particular sentence did you not focus on? Could you not identify? And this is a multiple response. You can say one and two, two and three, one and three, one, two, and three, all. Or if you were able to, if you think you were able to identify everything while solving the question, then don't mark anything, of course. So which aspect or which ones could you not identify? Let's get those responses. I only have responses from about 20 students. Let's get at least 40 people to put in their responses. 24, 25, 30, 32, 33. Which all aspects could you not identify? 3, 2, and 1. So we got about 33, 34 responses or so. And what you can really see is aspect 3 is the most popular one that people couldn't identify. And because that is the case, you're going to see the mistakes that people make. And it's purely because of aspect 3. And you can really clearly understand this piece overall. Okay. Now, if you were able to identify all three aspects, great. You know how to extract the intended meaning. You now need to, we can go into the grammar part of it. But if you don't know this, you've not done the master comprehension course well, you need to build, or you won't focus enough while you're doing this, you need to build that. Okay. So let's kind of, and this is really, really important. Why? Because if you want to achieve that 90th percentile, you need that 100% clarity in what the author wants to communicate. Let's kind of analyze the errors over here. And when you look at this, and again, remember, this is not an SC session, so I'm going to go slightly fast over here. You see, you have a subject verb over here. You have a verb here is claimed, there's no subject. This is missing subject. Similarly, this verb over here has missing subject. So that you have two missing subjects. Clearly, you have a subject verb error. So let's kind of look at that over here. So we know the meaning analysis. Let's kind of go towards the choice analysis. So let's look at choice B. So while with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim. Why is choice B wrong? Let me just clear the poll. Why is choice B wrong? Because it really says, who has the ulterior motive here? As per choice B? No, as per choice B, not as per the original. The few experts, while with an ulterior motive, a few experts do claim, right? Is that what the author wanted to communicate? No, that's not what the author wanted to communicate. Hence, choice B is wrong. Nothing wrong with the grammar part. If this were an independent sentence, if choice B were there independently, that would have been okay. But because it changes the meaning, we have an issue here. And actually then kills the ulterior motive that the church had. So that's why you had kind of two meaning distortions here. Let's look at choice C. While a few experts claim that the church coined the date, blah, 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 their more prevalent belief is, as many of you were saying, hey, choice C is wrong. And a majority, well, the biggest group over here chose choice B. No, choice C, I'm sorry. 43% of you chose choice C. The second claim is by the same entity. Remember over here, aspect 3, claim 1 was by entity 1, claim 2 was by entity 2. Okay, it's not the expert's belief. Is that clear why choice C is wrong? Okay. And again, nothing to do with grammar. It's about building that skill. And you can really see if you were making mistakes in this category of question, you're correct. What would your corrective action be if you made a mistake and you chose choice C, which, you know, a good number of you have? Understand meaning. What does that mean? Focus on meaning. There are two possibilities that could have happened if you chose choice C. One is you did not focus on aspect 3 over here. This is my aspect 3, or as is written over here. Or you probably did take this into account, but while analyzing choice C, you completely forgot this. So either you didn't extract aspect 3, or you extracted it but missed it while uh, uh, while evaluating choice C. And someone said this really well. The whole verbal section is about understanding rather than, you know, the grammar rules or so. And this is something which is really important. Now, why is this feedback important to those of you who chose choice C? Extracted and forgot. You're spot on. A lot of people do this in CR and RC too, by the way. People do pre-thinking when you read, but they don't read the answer choices well enough. They choose the incorrect option. Okay. So Why is this feedback important? Why is this feedback important? Because if you want to improve from that 60th percentile to that 90th percentile, these are the kind of mistakes. Did you make a grammar mistake here? Did you make a grammar mistake here? No, this is beautifully constructed as a sentence. Beautifully constructed, right? A lot of people will say this is a modifier error and you'd be classifying it wrong. It's not a modifier error, it's a behavior issue. And getting to that 90th percentile is about inculcating those correct behaviors. Okay. Choice D is a bit more challenging. I'm going to really draw parallel because you have a structure which is by as, and then you have this uh, but its celebration on this date is. So I'm going to just draw a parallel over here, which is about meaning. Let's kind of look at this sentence. Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. In this case, are you communicating information? Yes. Are you making a claim? Are you making a claim here? No, you're not making a claim, right? Should you be blamed if you tell someone that Apple is a market leader, is claimed by Forbes magazine, but it turns out that Apple is not the market leader? No, absolutely not, right? So in terms of whether you're backing something or not, that over here you're not backing it. All you're doing is merely communicating information. You're saying, hey, Forbes magazine said Apple is the market leader. Okay. Now, what happens when you use as versus is? Yes, Forbes is making the claim, but are you backing that claim here? Yes. Which means that should you be blamed if it turns out Apple is not the market leader? Yes. It's a subtle difference, but it is a difference. It's tested very, very frequently in RC, sometimes in SC. And knowing that subtlety is really important. Okay. Let's kind of look at this. Why is this? Let's kind of take a couple of examples over here. Let's go this over here. Let's look at this. Pfizer is the most effective vaccine as shown by FDA's testing. Are you not backing the claim that Pfizer is the most effective vaccine? Or Pfizer's vaccine is the most effective vaccine? Yeah. So you're backing it. So choice D is wrong because it uses these two as over here as claimed. And similarly, but its celebration on this date is to, the author is also backing this claim 1 and claim 2. Whereas in the original sentence, both claim 1 and claim 2 were by different groups. The author was merely communicating information. Because we went from communicating to backing, this is not correct, even though grammatically, no issues. Okay. Let's come to the correct option here. Okay. Correct option starts, it's weird, that the church coined is claimed by a few experts, but the more prevalent belief is, look at where the more prevalent belief is over here, uh, is it is celebrated on this day to honor Valentine's uh, death or burial. Why do people reject this? It's an unfamiliar sentence structure because with that verb, a lot of people kind of focus on the elegance part of SC. Okay, they really just say, hey, there is a that missing here. Okay, and then some people think is claimed as passive. This is claimed, and they reject this. How many of you may rejected this answer choice because of one of these aspects? Again, passive voice is absolutely okay on the GMAT.
and someone tells you, see passive voice, reject it, and because it's statistically wrong most of the time. Yes, that statistic is correct. um, okay, that statistic is correct, that most of the times when you have a passive voice, it's going to be an incorrect option. But what kind of ability are you aiming for? What ability are you aiming for on SC? Most of you, 80th percentile or higher, right? If you're aiming for 80th percentile or higher ability, then are you not going to see sentences which are statistically unlikely? If you want to be among the top 10, top 20, top 5 percentile of students, if you're aiming for that 730, you are trying to become a statistical anomaly, right? 730 is top 3 percentile. Okay, again, we talked about sentence structure. When you think about all of these options over here, you know, even when you look at choice A, yes, it was subject verb issue. You got that because of subject verb. But every other option, there was meaning issue. Grammar wise, we were perfect. Okay. So, did you see? We're just about 3 to 4 minutes now. Do you see Were you able to see the various sentence structures just in one sentence or one question? Right. When we talk about those 200 sentence structures, you can see there are about 8 to 10 sentence structures just right here. Okay. So, and that's kind of where building the right foundation and having that feedback's really important. Having the right, using the right method, having that feedback's really important, and that refinement and having that feedback's really important. And we give you about, in just in SC, 87 points over here, 25 points over here, and 25 points over here in our course of feedback. Okay. Where can you find these sentence structures? You don't find these sentence structures as sentence structure 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, but as you go from subject verb to verbs to pronouns to modifiers, you would see those sentence structures come in. How many of you have done the e-GMAT SC course? You've done it, and you've seen the complexity increase from as you go from subject verb to modifiers, modifiers to parallelism, and parallelism to comparison, and then from there to cementing, medium and hard, right? That's where you see the sentence structures out there. The as claimed example, does e-GMAT verbal course cover that? Yes, there are many such examples which are there. Okay, depending on you look at the application files or Scholaranium. And how do we give that personalized feedback? If you go to our website, our homepage actually has about 10 videos that talk about personalization, whether it's study plan, whether it's analytics, whether it's feedback during stage 1. Okay. And if so, here's another piece over here. But 70% of the people who do the course well pass hard cementing. That's, I think, and we track that because that is the piece which is there. I mean, you think about why we exist as an organization. We exist to help diligent students. If you're not diligent, you write to our strategy team, the first thing they'll tell you is please be diligent first. Make sure you can commit time. And if you're diligent, we're there to help you. If you're not diligent, no one can help you. Let me just say that. You've got to put in that effort. And you kind of saw this over here. I can probably create 100 questions with the combination of these sentence structures. I can't give you a silver spoon to really say if you see this, choose that as correct. You have to have that logical mindset. I can help build that logical mindset if you are consistent. If you put in 90 minutes every day. I would rather have actually a student who puts in 90 minutes every day or an hour every day for a week, and rather than having someone who puts in 3 hours 2 days and not study for the rest of the week. Okay. So yeah, with that, again, we would love for you to be a part of this statistic. The real number over here, is probably 10x more for 2021. It's just these are numbers of people who report. So if you're an e-GMAT student, you do well, please report your score. For others, just make sure this is not rocket science. You can get there. Okay. we talked about this over here. I think I'm going to just summarize this so that we can have some time for your other questions. We talked about these 4 data points where, why the GMAT score is important, what the GMAT tests, what does the personalized study plan do, and the stages of learning. Make sure the other piece that the last piece that I want to really tell you is use the right methods. Don't use shortcuts. Don't use tricks. Someone who tells you they're going to teach you tricks just to run away from them. Focus on learning, and the GMAT score will be there automatically. You focus on tricks, and you'll continue to chase your GMAT scores for years, and you'd feel disheartened. Okay. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. I'm going to let me share the session PDF and let me share some other links. So if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, if you're not connected with us on YouTube, definitely connect with us. Let me share some links over here. You're talking about different study plans. You're talking about downloading the ESR. Number 3 has the ESR. Prateek, we talked about Booth, Admit, and you can see how many mistakes they made. Where did they need help, and how did they go about building their own study strategy? So YouTube, we plan to publish, or we publish 2 success stories every week. Definitely take a look at that. Okay. All right, your questions, and thank you for the feedback. I truly appreciate it. I'll drop a link to my LinkedIn profile. Absolutely. Sorry about that. I think I had that over here. LinkedIn. Yeah, this is where it is. Sorry about that. So, is my LinkedIn profile. Also, if you want to connect with Payal posts motivational stories every week or so. We ourselves are learners, Payal and I, as co-founders, and so as learners, we want to make sure that we, whatever we learn during the process of learning, we share with you guys. So you're going to really see, if as you go on Pyle's LinkedIn profile and my LinkedIn profile, you look at some of the posts, you'll see how we also focus on making sure that kids learn slightly differently. How we kind of draw timelines on 100-foot long alleyway, and so on and so forth. Okay. All right. Questions. Geolink, yes. If you ask that question in the Q&A pod, I can respond to it. Let me see how I can share the link here. I'll probably have to add the links at the bottom of one of the links pod. And all our webinar links are also on our homepage. If you scroll right to the bottom, you should be able to get to it. But let me see overall. In the session files, I'm going to add a link to the session files so that actually, no, I can't do that. I can add a link to YouTube plus LinkedIn portal. Will you help us during scholarship phase? No, we don't do that service, Kasturi. I'm sorry. I'll help you connect to other people who've gotten scholarships. Definitely. Will I sit down and review your essays? And no, that's something that we can't. We spend a lot of our time building product. We are building probably one of the larger products in our history, where talked about good habits. The next um, the next frontier that we see is to make sure that we impose good habits on everyone. And again, we do that by exposing your bad habits and showing how you compare to others. And we're building a gamification module on our platform. So our focus is on building products as such, and helping you ace the GMAT, but not so much. We do provide a ton of information on scholarships. So if you look at MBA and scholarship, e-GMAT blog would come out as one of the first things. We do a lot, publish a lot of research, but we don't work one-on-one with people on their application and scholarships or so. Okay, Vasudev, thank you. Purpose of IR and AWA. AW is a really important section. Why? Because it, when you think about the GMAT, it in an objective, rather in a multiple choice fashion, It tells you, it evaluates your ability to distinguish between what's a strengthener versus what's not, what's an assumption versus what's not, what's a weakener, what's not, and so on and so forth. But there you're given choices. What an AWA does is it tests your ability to build an argument in a very persuasive manner. That is really, really valuable. In fact, at e-GMAT, if you go to our jobs page, uh, let me actually share our. This is our careers page. I don't think we have any openings now, but if you look at this, our hiring process is actually very similar to a B school application, where we ask you to do an AWA. We have a domain specific assignment as well. And AWA, the kind of insights that AWA gives us about your thought process, we have our own format of AWA that we go through, that are unparalleled. And I mean, we started with this process about 10 months back, and the kind of people who we have hired are way smarter than who we've hired before. IR, when it comes, we're in a world where everyone's supposed to be able to read and draw inferences from data, and IR actually is, I think, a really good way to look at data, not just in the quantitative form, but also in what I call as semi-quantitative. When you think about most, it's in some ways quantitative, but it's also a visual segmentation form, and IR tests your ability to do that. It's unfortunate that business schools don't pay as much heed to IR, but in my opinion, it's a really, really good section. What is the difference in score requirements for the UK and the USB schools, Oxford versus MIT? Now, when it comes to European, and I put UK in the European bucket, and this is something where if you go to our admits and scholarship, you'll also be able to get that. Let me just share the link. So on our homepage, there's an admits and scholarship page, and if you scroll down on this page, you'll see that. So USB schools, way more. More sensitive to your GMAT scores, uh, UKB schools, once you get a certain threshold, at Oxford, for example, once you get a 710, 720, they love you there. And then a 760 versus a 720, they're not going to have, they will treat you differently, but not to the same extent as MIT would. Having said that, in my opinion, other than LBS, INSEAD, and IESC, not many European B schools are the same quality level um, as the top 20 US B schools, which is why you see the salaries from these three schools, INSEAD, IESC, and LBS, and to a certain degree LSE as well, at the same level as the salaries from USB schools. But when you look at Oxford and Cambridge, I don't think the salaries match up. How valuable is this? This is a great question, which says, how valuable is your personalized study plan without taking the SigmaX mock initially? That's a great question. So the value of a personalized study plan is a lot more if you're in that 550, 580 to that 720 bracket. If, for example, if your score is at a 500, it's pretty clear that you probably have a weakness everywhere. Then this personalized study plan is not as valuable in that case. But if you're at a 620, it's just really, really valuable. It just saves you so much time. All right, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. I got a couple of other questions as well. How long would it take to go from a 620 to a 740? We're looking at about a 120, 140 hours of effort, of diligent effort, continuous effort. If you do that, that's about a month if you think about it, to 45 days of effort. If you look at this and you're looking at 45 days or 140 hours, you're looking at, on an average, 4 hours a day, including weekdays and weekends, which you're not, on working days, you're going to be able to put in 2 hours. On weekends, you're going to be able to put in 6 hours or so. You assume you're going to take 4 days of holidays where you could put in another 6 hours, you get to that 140-hour mark. Again, the range is between 100 to 140 hours, depending on how intensively you study. So that's something which is there. What sequence would I recommend to study? So again, your personalized study plan is the best bet. But let's say you're starting from a very low score. Let's say you're at a 20th, 30th percentile on verbal. Then I would recommend starting from master comprehension to sentence correction. Going from sentence correction to either reading comprehension or critical reasoning could go either way. But whatever you do, make sure you do cementing. Similarly, on the quant side, start with quant basics. Again, remember our quant course is space enabled, so if you know the basics, your diagnostics will tell you don't need to study the course. uh, uh, and then go from there to essentially number properties, word problems, geometry, algebra, and then advanced topics. And again, in every topic, similarly as you did with verbal, do cementing. Okay. So string arguments says, I've seen a partner matters I get low level ones wrong, but get the mid and high questions well. I think that's really dangerous. How do I avoid that kind of overthinking? Just don't worry about it. Those, I mean, a lot of people say think about this, give more importance to this test than they should. I mean, they really say, what if I don't do well on this test? I mean, my life is going to be where it is right now. I'm not going to be able to achieve those heights and so on and so forth. Um, in some ways, that's true, but in many ways, that's not true. Let me just say that. First of all, you're talking about a test that you can take anytime. Number one. Number two, it's just a test. If you truly want to become a manager, you're going to be taking decisions where you'd be talking about investing $10 million or so. And let me tell you, while a B school will give you a framework to evaluate your investments, a B school is not going to be able to instill that what shall I say, the heart to be able to invest that money. That's something that you have to tell yourself. You truly want to become a manager, a leader. You want to be able to decide where 5 million to $10 million go in. You need to be able to really say, I know what I'm doing is right. I'm not, because I've followed the right methods, because I've done the right framework. And again, I'm going to be mostly right. I may make one or two mistakes, but that's all a part of the journey, and making mistakes is learning. But as long as I've checked all the T's and dotted all the I's, I'm okay. I'm going to be mostly okay. That's what you have to tell yourself, string argument, and not worry about question by question. You've got to follow the process, because that's what's in your hand. What's the weightage given to academics if the application has good growth trajectory and work experience of 5+ years? So when it comes to ACADS, think about how you would hire someone. These schools look at it in a very similar way. And again, you may really say, I go back to hiring. It's just because hiring is investing in someone, um, and you've got to make that decision in a very judicious manner. So if you have someone who's done really well in his or her career, and you're comparing two candidates, and that's kind of where the hiring piece comes in, because you're comparing multiple good candidates there. You look at their career trajectories, and you say candidates A's career trajectory is better than that of B, but candidate B's acads are better than that of A. Who would you choose? In my opinion, I'd choose candidate A. Why? Because your career trajectory is a much more um, uh, uh, recent indicator of who you are than your acads. On the other hand, if candidate A's career trajectory is really good and his acads are really good, then candidate A becomes really valuable for me, because it shows a certain level of consistency. It shows that that person is very dedicated to excelling in whatever he or she does. Um, and that's kind of where, when you think about people who get into Harvard and Stanford, you're going to see two or three different kinds of people. And one kind of person is those who have a regular but progressive career, where they've a good growth trajectory and they've excelled in acads. And then some of those people really, I mean, a third of Harvard's class is filled up by those people, because these are people who they know they have they actually have a knack of excelling in whatever they do. do a good number of these people go and open up billion-dollar businesses? No, they don't do that. But what a good number of them do is they go in consulting firms, they go to corporates, and then they go to a vice president or they become a partner at a McKinsey or so. And that's good for Harvard, by the way. So, uh, does that help, AK? Is there a chance that a person can start losing a grip on verbal? A great question. I get this a lot. Why verbal and quant can't be prepared together in e-GMAT study plan? Um, Great question. A lot of people ask this question. A lot of people don't believe the answers when we say that that you shouldn't be preparing verbal and quant together. And so um, think about when you're when you so most people who study using e-GMAT spend about 2 hours per day working professional. 99% of our students are working professionals. Only 1% are those who put 7 to 8 hours a day. If you're putting 7 to 8 hours a day, you should study two sections. Let me just start off over there. But if you're putting 2 hours a day, you're doing stage one. Okay, you can't study two sections. Why? Because if you study two sections, you're doing 40 minutes of one, 40 minutes of the other. You both of them, you have new content that you've learned in. Now, in terms of the process of learning doesn't happen when you're in front of the computer learning content. It also happens. Let's say you've studied verb ing modifiers, or you've learned the concept of only and all. When you're reading something, if you truly want to become a 90th percentile student, when you see the usage of only, you should be really saying, is it used in the right way? And that learning is what makes this, that thinking is what makes this permanent. Now, what happens when you're doing just 40 minutes and 40 minutes of quant, 40 minutes of verbal, 40 minutes of CR, 40 minutes of probability? You have two new unrelated learnings, or semi-related learnings. And then now when you are out there, and none of them is enough, by the way, then what do you think about? How does that learning get cemented? How do you achieve that 90th percentile? You don't. So that's why we want to make sure you focus on just doing one thing when you're learning this, because we want you to achieve that 90th percentile. Now, will you forget verbal? If you've done cementing right, if you've achieved that 60% accuracy in hard questions, that's kind of the purpose of cementing. You will not. Okay, you will not forget verbal. It's the same way. I mean, if you played a sport, let's say you've you in tennis, or rather in squash. I play a lot of squash. If you've been practicing burst and you perfected burst, and then you go on and to practice return of serve, and for 2 weeks, when you come back, you may need a little refresher for about 30 minutes in burst, but you would definitely get back to the same performance, Devashish. Okay. Does that answer your question? And the reason is, the other way they think about it is that if you do two things together, you're likely never not going to reach. I don't like to say never, but they're going to take a lot longer to reach that 90th percentile ability overall. Okay. Which is kind of the same question, Khushbu. I know you asked this question right now. You get bored by doing verbal. The very fact that you're getting bored by doing verbal, if you're studying just 2 hours a day, just shows that you're not doing it from an attitude of learning. Okay. And some of you will get slightly bored, but that's what is a DNA of a 90th percentile student, to really persist post this. I mean, 90th percentile is not just about learning content, it's about learning information the right way, learning how to apply it. It's about those mental skills that push you to persist when a part of your brain says, hey, let me watch that YouTube video, it seems really entertaining. Okay. Again, if you're studying 7 hours, absolutely. Can you study 7 to 8 hours? Yes, you can. Again, if you're that kind of person who studied 7 to 8 hours before, during your college days, if you can stay really focused, but then break those 7 to 8 hours to 2 hour intervals with 1 hour of break. Make sure you work out during that time. Make sure you have something that you love, because the 7 to 8 hours is probably needs to spread across 3 study sessions at least. Ram Charan, well, really good name. It's one of the best consultants out there. a really famous business school professor, Ram Charan, or I don't know if he's still a B school professor, but his books are fantastic. The courses you offer allow me to go to work and prepare for the GMAT simultaneously, or is it the type of course in which preparing for the exam exclusively like JE? No, all as I said, 99% of our students are working professionals. We expect 90 minutes to 2 hours every day. Again, watch the interviews on our YouTube channel. You would see exactly. Kasturi says, why is e-GMAT created a prep strategy completely based on Sigma mock? Should we not have a basic prep which should help candidates recall, revise? Good point, Rev. It's not solely based. I mean, remember this. You've got to really put a solid basis on evaluating what your starting point is. Now, if you feel you've forgotten those concepts, one of the things that you can do is go to the official guide, solve 20 questions in SC, 20 in CR, 20 in RC, and about 50 questions on from the official guide on and essentially recall the basics and then take the Sigma X mock. Doing so is going to take you about 3 to 4 days, and then you can take a mock test if you feel that's going to be the case. Or you can solve similar number of questions in Scholarium. We offer that in the Scholarium free trial too, and do that again. If you're studying properly, you're going to likely need 60% of all questions that we offer anyway. So do we need to keep revising files while doing quant? No, you don't. The whole point of cementing is that you need to revise just your mistakes, which means maybe the bookmark question is Scholaranium, probably not the files. No. 10 years of experience, will it matter if I'm trying for an MBA in the US? Well, if you have a good reason, and again, we have a lot of people on who take an MBA over who do an MBA after 30 years. So who are 30 years or older and do an MBA or so. So yeah, read this blog. Let's look at this. It's just you have to have a solid reason for doing your MBA. But 2017 I visited UCLA. 2017 2018 I visited UCLA. The full-time MBA class of 2019 had the oldest student there was 47 years old. Again, he had a good reason to do an MBA, and they admitted him. So. Devashish, I did not get your question. He says, is there a plan in e-GMAT to counter such possibilities? What kind of possibilities, if you could express again, I'd be happy to answer that. Um, you can study I can study 7 to 8 hours. Yes, Khushbu, if you're an e-GMAT student, study 7 to 8 hours. Let the team know they can create 2 parallel paths for you. They can also tell you what all to just keep on monitoring so that you're not that your time's being spent productively. What is the reason they gave if you are talking about someone who's older? I mean, sometimes you're talking about people from military. There are other people who actually reach a point in their career and they really say, have done well technically. I want to change my stream. There are some who want to start a business, and they need help with regards to marketing and other aspects. There are others uh, who essentially want to completely do something different. They feel okay, they've done technically really well, and they now want to become going from, let's say, being a machine learning person at Google. I'll take the same example to becoming a consultant, and they need the skills needed to bridge the gap. And again, that's a good enough reason to go for an MBA. So again, remember, you need to have a good enough reason, and you need to have a post MBA path that is something that you're likely to achieve. One of the first things that's going to happen, if you, regardless of whether you're a younger candidate or I mean, an age appropriate candidate or an older candidate, is first of all, the admission officer is going to evaluate your candidacy. Then, if they like it, they're going to go to the careers office, and they're going to really say, hey, this guy says he's doing A, and he wants to do B, and essentially, do you think he's going to be able to do B? If the careers office says no, then they're going to reject him. That's very simple. I mean, case in point, one of our former employees who, by the way, was an entrepreneur prior to joining e-GMAT and an e-GMAT student prior to joining e-GMAT. He scored a 740. He was an entrepreneur. He actually had sold his company for about a crore, which about $150,000 in that during that time when he did sell that. And he got a 740, good score, as an ex-entrepreneur. He wrote in his applications that he wants to actually work in private equity, and in B schools, every B school he applied to rejected this. Then he was a student. We really liked him. I interviewed him. His name is Sharang. If you go on our YouTube channel, type e-GMAT Sharang, you'd be able to get there. And then he worked at e-GMAT as a product manager for 2 years, and he really liked working in product management. And and then he applied to a bunch of schools, and same schools that he rejected him earlier. And he said, now I want to do product management. I mean, the same school had an application on private equity, product management. The same schools accepted him, not just accepted him, they also gave him about $180,000 worth of scholarships. So um Jivat, this again, it has to be logical as to why you want to do an MBA. Okay. Hopefully that helps. With that, guys, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. It was great having you here. Hopefully, you guys had as much fun as I did, and hopefully, you guys are as motivated as I am to help you with the GMAT. So check the free trial out, see if you like it, and I'll see you in a few days. Thank you very much. Bye bye, and have a great day.